My wife called me weak in a room full of people who already wanted to believe it. That was the part that stayed with me. Not the laughter, not the raised glasses, not even the way Evan Cole leaned back in his chair like he had just been handed permission to look down on me. It was Rachel's voice, smooth and amused, carrying across the private dining room of a steakhouse in downtown Stamford as if 14 years of marriage were just another joke on the company card. "Daniel is sweet," she said, lifting her wine glass with that polished smile I used to think was reserved for me. "But he's weak. He would forgive anything." The table broke open with laughter. Not loud enough to be cruel in public, just controlled enough to be acceptable among people wearing tailored suits and $600 heels. That made it worse. Cruelty always hurts more when it knows how to behave. I sat there with my napkin folded across my lap, my wedding ring catching the amber light from the wall sconce, and I did the one thing nobody expected. I said nothing. Across the table, Evan smiled with his mouth, but watched me with his eyes, waiting for me to flinch, waiting for the little husband to prove the joke true. Rachel did not look embarrassed. She did not touch my arm under the table or laugh nervously to soften the edge. She laughed with them, bright and easy, like my humiliation had finally given her the room she wanted. I remember the smell of charred ribeye, the clink of ice in a lowball glass, the low hum of executives talking about revenue targets and market expansion like the world was made of numbers and men like me were just background noise. I was 42 years old, a cybersecurity consultant from Westport, Connecticut, the kind of man who fixed routers at midnight, handled insurance forms, shoveled the driveway before sunrise, and made sure the bills were paid before anyone had to worry. I was not flashy. I did not fill a room by talking over people. I did not turn every disagreement into a performance. For years, I thought that meant I was steady. That night, I learned Rachel had decided it meant I was small. She sat beside me in a navy dress I had picked up from the dry cleaner that morning, her hair perfect, her hand resting near her phone like it was the only thing in the room she trusted. Evan was on her other side, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, comfortable in a way coworkers should not be comfortable. He made some comment about how every successful woman needed a soft place to land, then glanced at me like I was the carpet. Another ripple of laughter moved around the table. I felt it pass over me, warm and ugly, but something inside me cooled instead of cracked. Maybe a younger version of me would have argued. Maybe he would have demanded respect, raised his voice, made the whole restaurant turn and stare. But the man sitting there that night had spent 20 years securing systems by noticing what everyone else missed. A changed password, a deleted calendar event, a login at the wrong hour, a pattern hiding behind normal behavior. So I did not defend myself. I watched. I watched Rachel laugh too quickly when Evan spoke. I watched her hand move away from mine when the waiter came by. I watched her phone light up face down beside her plate, and I watched her thumb kill the screen before I could read the name. Then I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and understood something that landed quietly but permanently. She was not afraid of hurting me anymore. She was not afraid of losing me. In her mind, I had already been reduced to a man who would absorb the insult, pay the mortgage, smile in the Christmas photos, and keep forgiving because forgiveness was cheaper than confrontation. The check came. Evan tried to grab it. Rachel teased him for showing off, and I placed my card down before either of them could move. Nobody noticed the timing. Nobody noticed my hand was steady. Rachel leaned toward me on the way out, perfume sharp in the cold March air, and whispered, "You know I was just joking, right?" I looked at the valet stand, at the black SUVs lining the curb, at the restaurant windows glowing behind us like a stage after the actors leave. I smiled enough to keep the peace. "Sure," I said, but deep down, in a place she had never bothered to understand, I knew the truth had just taken its first breath. The drive home from Stamford should have taken 35 minutes, but that night every mile felt like it belonged to somebody else. Rachel sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone with the blue glow lighting the sharp line of her cheek. She did not ask if I was quiet because of what happened at dinner. She did not apologize again. She hummed along to a song on the radio and answered 2 messages with that little half-smile people wear when they're standing in one room but living in another. I kept both hands on the wheel and watched the wet pavement shine under the headlights. March in Connecticut has a way of making everything look unfinished, snowbanks melting into gray slush, bare trees scratching at the sky, houses glowing warm behind glass while the cold stays outside where it belongs. Our house sat at the end of a quiet street in Westport, for bedrooms, white trim, a two-car garage, the kind of place people call beautiful because they never hear what happens after the door closes. I bought that house 12 years earlier after landing my first major cybersecurity contract with a hospital network in New Haven. Rachel had cried on the front porch the day we got the keys. She said it felt like proof that all the hard years had meant something. Back then, she was still building her career in marketing, driving an old silver Honda with a cracked windshield and eating cereal for dinner during product launches. I was the man who brought her coffee at midnight, proofread her presentations, packed her lunches when she forgot to eat, and told her she belonged in every room she was afraid to enter. I never needed applause for that. Love, to me, was maintenance. Quiet work. The kind nobody notices until it stops getting done. I fixed the garbage disposal, set up her home office, negotiated our mortgage rate, moved money into retirement accounts, and remembered which side of the closet she liked for winter coats. When her father had surgery in Pennsylvania, I drove 4 hours each way for 3 weekends so she could sleep in the passenger seat. When her first big campaign failed, I sat with her on the kitchen floor until 2 in the morning while she blamed herself, then made pancakes because I did not know how else to tell her she was not alone. That was the version of us I kept seeing as I pulled into the driveway. The younger Rachel. The woman who once reached for my hand in grocery store aisles. The woman who looked at me like steady was not boring, like calm was not weakness, like a man did not have to dominate a room to be worth respecting. But somewhere between promotions, private dinners, conference badges, and company retreats, my steadiness had become furniture to her. Useful, familiar, easy to ignore. Inside the house, she kicked off her heels by the mudroom and said she was exhausted. I watched her walk upstairs without touching the railing, phone already lifted again, thumb moving fast. A minute later, the shower turned on. I stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by granite counters, stainless steel appliances, and the low hum of a refrigerator I had repaired twice instead of replacing. Everything looked perfect. The framed vacation photo from Cape Cod. The bowl of green apples on the island. The mail stacked neatly beside my laptop. But perfection has a sound when it starts to fail. It is not a crash. It is a click, small and almost polite, like a lock turning in another room. I loosened my tie, opened my laptop, and stared at the dark screen until my reflection stared back. I did not feel angry. Not yet. Anger is loud, and what settled in me that night was quieter than that. It was recognition. For years, I had mistaken being patient for being blind. Rachel thought silence meant surrender. She had forgotten what I did for a living. I found weaknesses for people who swore their systems were secure. I followed traces they thought were gone. I listened to patterns nobody else respected. And as the shower ran upstairs, I placed my wedding ring on the kitchen island, not because the marriage was over, but because for the first time in 14 years, I needed to look at my hand and remember it belonged to me. By Monday morning, the house had returned to its usual performance. Coffee brewed at 6:15, the furnace clicked awake behind the hallway wall, and Rachel came downstairs in a cream blouse and charcoal blazer, looking like a woman who had never humiliated her husband in a restaurant 3 nights earlier. She kissed the air near my cheek, not my skin, then reached past me for her travel mug. I noticed things I used to ignore because noticing them felt like admitting something was wrong. Her phone was no longer face up on the counter while she checked the weather. It stayed in her hand, tilted slightly away from me, protected with the same instinct people use around passwords and secrets. When a notification came through, her eyes flicked to it too fast, then softened into that private little smile before she locked the screen. I asked if she had a busy day. She said, same as always, but her calendar on the kitchen wall had a blank square where a client dinner used to be. Rachel was organized to the point of obsession. She color-coded work trips, dentist appointments, even dry cleaning pickups. A missing event was not forgetfulness. It was a footprint someone had tried to sweep away. I did not ask about it. I poured coffee and watched steam rise between us like a curtain. Over the next week, the small things kept collecting. A new perfume bottle appeared on her vanity, something expensive and floral, too bold for the woman who used to say strong scents gave her headaches. 2 dresses came home from a boutique in Greenwich, both still hidden under garment bags at the back of the closet. She started going to the gym after work, but never came home with damp hair or a water bottle. Her mileage changed too. The BMW had an app that tracked service needs, and one night when I checked the tire pressure warning, I saw she had added 87 miles on a day. She claimed she never left Stanford. That number sat in my mind like a blinking cursor. 87 miles was not an errand. It was a destination. On Thursday, she stood in the laundry room laughing at her phone, not loudly, just enough for the sound to reach the hallway and stop me in place. When I stepped in, the laugh disappeared. She turned the screen black and said it was just something from the office. I nodded. Men like me learn early that the first lie is rarely the loud one. The first lie is casual. It wears slippers. It stands beside the dryer and asks why you are acting strange. That night, after she went upstairs, I sat at my desk and opened a clean notebook. I wrote the date at the top, then one word under it: patterns. I was not ready to accuse her. Accusations give dishonest people a warning. They teach them which doors to lock and which stories to fix. So I did what I had done for banks, hospitals, and law firms for almost 20 years. I separated emotion from data. I wrote down the dinner in Stanford, the comment, Evan Cole, the hidden notification, the missing calendar entry, the extra mileage, the boutique bags, the gym nights that did not look like gym nights. Seeing it on paper changed the temperature in the room. In my head, each detail had been painful but separate. On the page, they started reaching for each other. Around 11:30, Rachel came downstairs for water wearing the oversized sweatshirt I bought her at a Red Sox game in Boston 8 years earlier. For 1 second, she looked like my wife again. Tired, soft, familiar. Then her phone buzzed in her hand, and she turned away before reading it. The old version of me would have asked who it was. The new version simply watched her reflection in the dark kitchen window. Her face changed before she remembered I was there. That was the moment I understood the truth was not arriving all at once. It was leaking in quietly, through seams she thought I was too weak to inspect. The first real proof came from the one place Rachel forgot I had connected to the cloud. It was the following Tuesday, a little after 1 in the morning, and rain had been tapping against the kitchen windows for hours, soft and steady, the kind of rain that makes a quiet house feel even quieter. I had been in my office reviewing security reports for a hospital client in Hartford, not because the work could not wait, but because sleep had started feeling like a room I no longer knew how to enter. Upstairs, Rachel had gone to bed at 10:30 after telling me she had an early presentation. Her voice was light. Her eyes were tired. Her phone was under her pillow. Around 1:12, a notification appeared. On my second monitor from the rear porch camera. Motion detected. Normally, it caught raccoons near the trash bins, tree branches shifting in the wind, the neighbor's cat crossing the patio like he paid property taxes. I almost dismissed it. Then the thumbnail loaded, and I saw Rachel standing outside in her robe beneath the weak yellow porch light, holding her phone to her ear. For a few seconds, I did not move. The rain blurred the image just enough to make it feel unreal, like I was watching somebody else's wife in somebody else's life. I clicked the clip open. The audio was grainy, but clear enough. She was speaking softly, the way people speak when they believe the walls are helping them lie. "He is asleep," she said. "He never checks anything." The sentence landed without noise. No music, no thunder, just 7 words and the low hiss of rain through a tiny microphone mounted above the back door. I replayed it once, then again. The third time, my hand stopped shaking. There are moments when pain turns into information. That was one of them. I did not storm upstairs. I did not open the bedroom door and hold the phone in her face. I did not ask who was on the other end, because I already knew enough to know the answer would arrive dressed as another lie. Instead, I downloaded the clip, saved it twice, then copied it to an encrypted drive I used for client archives. I labeled the file March 19th, 1:12 in the morning, rear porch call. Professional habits are strange things. They do not care that your chest feels hollow. They still make you name the evidence correctly. I sat there in the blue light of my monitor, listening to the rain, and remembered all the little jokes Rachel used to make about my cameras and smart locks. "You and your gadgets," she would say, rolling her eyes when I checked a firmware update or replaced a battery before it died. She thought security was paranoia until it protected her deliveries, her car, her jewelry, her comfort. She never imagined it might protect me from the version of her she kept outside after midnight. The next morning, Rachel came downstairs in black slacks and a white blouse, hair smooth, makeup flawless, coffee. mug in hand. She complained about sleeping badly because of the rain. I looked at her over the rim of my cup and said that storms have a way of waking people up. She smiled without hearing me. That was her mistake. People who believe you are weak stop listening for meaning. They only listen for resistance. And I gave her none. I packed my laptop, kissed the air near her cheek the same way she had done to me, and left for a client meeting in New Haven with the clip secured in 3 places. By the time I reached Interstate 95, the rain had stopped, but everything it washed loose was still moving beneath the surface. By the end of that week, I stopped thinking of the truth as one thing. It was not a single confession, not one dramatic message, not a photograph that explained everything. It was a structure, and Rachel had built it carelessly, one small lie at a time. All I had to do was preserve the shape. On Friday night, after she told me she had to stay late for a campaign review in Stamford, I sat alone in my office with the door closed and created a folder on an encrypted drive. I stared at the blank name field for longer than I should have. Then I typed one word in capital letters, weak. It should have felt bitter. Instead, it felt accurate. That was the word she had chosen for the man who paid attention quietly. Fine. I would let it hold everything she thought I was too soft to find. Inside that folder, I created subfolders with clean names, the kind I used for client investigations: timeline, video, receipts, vehicle data, calendar discrepancies, Evan Cole. I did not like typing his name. It made the air in the room feel smaller. Still, I typed it carefully because evidence does not care what hurts. The rear porch clip went first, labeled by date and time. Then I added screenshots from the BMW app showing mileage that did not match her story. I exported credit card statements and highlighted 2 restaurant charges in Greenwich on nights she had claimed to be in team meetings. I pulled old calendar backups from our shared home server and found deleted entries that left shadows behind them. Reminders changed, locations removed, dinner blocks renamed. As client prep, most people think deleting something makes it disappear. It does not. It just leaves a different kind of mark. Around midnight, I found the hotel charge. Not on our primary account. Rachel was smarter than that. It sat inside a company reimbursement email she had forwarded to herself and forgotten in an archived folder on the family printer account, a place neither of us had looked at in years. The subject line was boring enough to hide in plain sight: March Regional Expense Correction. The attachment listed a boutique hotel in Greenwich, 1 room, 1 night, paid through her company card, tied to a client meeting that never appeared on the official calendar. Evan Cole's name appeared 2 lines below hers on the same expense batch. I leaned back in my chair and listened to the house breathe. The dishwasher hummed downstairs. The heat clicked through the vents. Somewhere above me, Rachel moved across the bedroom floor. Light steps, familiar steps, the sound of a life I used to trust. My chest tightened, but I stayed still. That was the discipline she had mistaken for weakness. Every file went into week. Every file got a date, a source, and a note. By 2 in the morning, the folder no longer felt like a place. It felt like a witness. I opened the timeline document and began connecting the pieces. Dinner in Stamford. The insult. The hidden notification. The missing calendar entry. The rear porch call. The false gym nights. The extra mileage. The Greenwich Hotel. The company card. Evan. The pattern was not loud, but it was complete enough to stop pretending it was coincidence. I wanted, for one tired second, to go upstairs and ask her why. Not because I expected honesty, but because some wounded part of me still wanted my wife to look me in the eye and remember I was human. Instead, I closed the laptop. I knew better. The moment you ask a liar for mercy, you hand them time. Time to edit. Time to erase. Time to turn your pain into their defense. Rachel had called me weak because I did not make noise. She had no idea that quiet men document everything. The next discovery did not come from Rachel's phone, or from a receipt, or from a camera. It came from an envelope left too confidently in the glove compartment of her BMW. On Saturday morning, she told me she was driving to Greenwich for a charity planning brunch, which sounded believable because Rachel had always loved rooms where generosity came with name tags and photographers. She kissed the air beside my cheek, took her keys from the hook, and backed out of the driveway at 9:18. 10 minutes later, I realized she had forgotten the folder of donation forms on the kitchen island. That was the kind of excuse a trusting husband would use to help. I used it to verify. I drove my truck toward Greenwich. keeping enough distance to avoid becoming part of her story. She did not go to the waterfront restaurant printed on the invitation. She turned into a quiet office park off East Putnam Avenue and parked beside a low brick building with tinted windows and a discreet sign for a family law firm. I sat across the street with my hands resting on the steering wheel, feeling something colder than surprise move through me. Infidelity hurts. Planning hurts differently. It has appointments. It has paperwork. It has strategy. Rachel walked inside carrying a leather tote I had bought her for Christmas, shoulders straight, head high, not the posture of a confused woman, but of someone following a plan. I waited 42 minutes. When she came back out, she was not alone. A gray-haired attorney walked her to the door, smiling like the future had already been priced. Rachel shook his hand, then looked around the parking lot before getting into her car. Not guilty. Careful. There is a difference. I drove home by a longer route and said nothing when she returned 2 hours later with a paper bag from the restaurant she had never visited. She placed it on the counter and told me the quiche was mediocre. I thanked her for bringing me one. That evening, while she took a call upstairs, I went to the BMW to grab a tire gauge from the garage shelf and found the envelope in the glove compartment under the owner's manual. It was not sealed. Maybe she thought I would never look. Maybe she thought I did not have a reason. Inside was a consultation summary from the law office, a printed checklist, and 3 words highlighted in yellow: establish emotional instability. I read them twice, then a third time, because my brain did not want to accept what my eyes understood. Beneath that line were notes about documenting mood swings, encouraging confrontations, recording outbursts, and creating a pattern of unreasonable jealousy. Suddenly, the dinner in Stanford looked different. Evan's smirk, Rachel's insult, the little public humiliations. They were not just disrespect. They were bait. She had expected me to explode, to raise my voice, to become the version of me her lawyer needed. The room seemed to tilt, though I was standing perfectly still. For weeks, I had been mourning a marriage. Now I was looking at a case being built against me inside my own home. I photographed every page, placed the envelope exactly where I found it, and closed the glove compartment without a sound. Back in my office, I opened the folder named Week and created a new subfolder, Divorce Strategy. The name looked clinical, almost harmless. It was neither. Rachel had mistaken my restraint for a flaw, and she had tried to weaponize it. But restraint is only dangerous to the person who underestimates it. By midnight, the charity brunch, the law office visit, the checklist, and the highlighted words were all preserved in 3 places. I sat in the dark with the monitor glow on my face and finally understood the full shape of what she was doing. She was not only leaving. She was designing me to lose before I knew the game had started. Monday morning arrived with the kind of sunlight that makes a house look innocent. Rachel came downstairs in a pale blue blouse, checking her earrings in the hallway mirror while telling me she had back-to-back meetings and might be home late. Her voice had the easy rhythm of someone still convinced she was controlling the weather. I nodded, poured coffee, and asked whether she wanted the last English muffin. She said no without looking up. 3 minutes later, she was gone, and the house released the breath it had been holding. I waited until her BMW disappeared from the driveway camera, then carried my laptop, the encrypted drive, and a legal pad to a small office in Norwalk above a dental clinic and a tax preparer. The sign on the frosted glass read Martha Hayes, Family Law. I had chosen her because her website did not promise revenge. It promised preparation. That mattered. I was tired of people who sold noise as strength. Martha was in her late 50s, with silver hair pinned neatly at the back of her head and eyes that made you feel disorganized before you spoke. Her office smelled faintly of coffee, paper, and lemon polish. No dramatic paintings. No fake sympathy. Just 2 chairs, a conference table, and a woman who had probably watched more marriages collapse than most priests. She shook my hand, invited me to sit, and asked me to start wherever the truth started. So I did. I told her about Stanford, Rachel's words, Evan Cole, the rear porch call, the Greenwich Hotel, the company card, the deleted calendar entries, the law office visit, and the highlighted phrase in the consultation notes. I did not embellish. I did not call Rachel names. I did not try to sound wounded enough to be believed. I just opened the folder named Week and let the files speak in order. Martha watched everything without interrupting. The room was so quiet I could hear the old radiator ticking against the wall. When the porch camera clip played, her expression did not change, but her pen stopped moving. When she read the divorce strategy page, she leaned back slightly and looked at me over the top of her glasses. "This is not emotion, Daniel," she said. "This is a case." I had not realized how badly I needed to hear an adult put rules around the chaos. She explained what we would do next. Secure financial records. Document marital assets. Preserve communications. Avoid confrontation. Do not move out without legal guidance. Do not give Rachel the argument she was trying to manufacture. Every sentence felt like someone placing sandbags around a flood. Then she asked whether Rachel's company knew about the expense reports. I said I doubted it. Martha tapped the page with Evan's name on it and said that if company funds were used improperly, the workplace issue needed to be handled carefully through the correct channels. Not as a personal attack. That was the difference between revenge and consequence. Revenge is emotional. Consequence has a paper trail. By the time I left her office, the folder had been copied to a secure legal portal, my bank statements were queued for review, and a formal plan existed where my panic had been. Outside, traffic moved along the post road, ordinary and indifferent. People carried dry cleaning, walked dogs, bought sandwiches, lived inside days that had not cracked open yet. I sat in my truck for a moment with both hands on the wheel, breathing like a man learning the ground had not vanished after all. Rachel had planned for anger. She had planned for jealousy. She had planned for the loud version of a wounded husband. She had not planned for Martha Hayes, 3 encrypted backups, and a man who had finally stopped asking to be understood. The first consequence arrived on a Wednesday at 9:46 in the morning, and Rachel was standing in a conference room when it found her. I know because she told me later, but by then her voice had lost the polished music she used around people she wanted to impress. That morning, she had left the house early in a charcoal suit, carrying the leather tote like armor, saying she had a major quarterly presentation with senior leadership. I watched her car leave through the kitchen window while my coffee went cold beside the sink. 20 minutes later, Martha called and confirmed that the documented expense concerns had been delivered through the proper legal channel to Rachel's company compliance office, along with a notice preserving relevant records. No accusations shouted across a room. No emotional email. No late-night message to Evan. Just a formal packet with dates, transactions, and enough precision to make ignoring it dangerous. I spent the morning in my office pretending to review a firewall audit, but my eyes kept drifting to the clock. 9:15, 9:30, 9:45. Then, at 9:46, my phone lit up. Rachel. I let it ring. It stopped, then started again. Then came a text message. "Did you do something?" 5 words. No greeting. No explanation. Just panic trying to wear authority. I did not answer. Martha had been clear. No direct arguments. No emotional oxygen. Let the process breathe. By 10:30, the call stopped. By 11, a mutual acquaintance who worked in human resources texted me carefully, asking if everything was okay at home. I did not respond to that either. People always want a story before the facts have finished walking into the room. From what I learned later, Rachel was halfway through her presentation when the compliance director stepped in with a woman from legal and asked her to pause. Evan was called out first. His face apparently went blank in the way men look when charm reaches a locked door. Then Rachel was asked to bring her laptop, company phone, and access badge to a private office. Her email was temporarily frozen. Her expense approvals were pulled. Her shared project files were placed under review. Nobody yelled. Nobody insulted her. That was the part that must have frightened her most. Professional consequences do not need raised voices. They come in calm language and closed doors. At 1:17, a courier delivered the divorce petition to her office reception desk. Martha had timed it cleanly, not cruelly. Rachel received the envelope after her first meeting with compliance, while still trying to understand how many parts of her life had moved without asking her permission. The same woman who had once laughed at my silence was now trapped inside it. I imagined her standing there beneath fluorescent lights, makeup perfect, hands not quite steady, reading my name on legal paper and realizing I had known more than she thought, for longer than she could explain. That evening, she did not come home until after 7. The garage door opened slowly, then closed with a tired mechanical sigh. I was in the kitchen, washing a single plate, when she walked in. Her face looked pale under the entryway light. Not ruined. Not broken. just stripped of performance. For the first time in months, she did not look at her phone. She looked at me. "What did you send them, Daniel?" she asked. Her voice was thin, careful, almost respectful. I dried the plate, placed it in the cabinet, and turned around. I did not raise my voice. I did not list the files. I did not explain the work it took to survive her plan. I only said, "The truth." She swallowed like the word had weight. Behind her, rain began tapping against the windows again, soft and steady, just like the night the porch camera woke me up. She opened her mouth, maybe to deny, maybe to accuse, maybe to beg for the old version of me to step back into the room and make this easier for her. But he was gone. And this time, she knew it. Rachel stood in the kitchen with the rain behind her and the truth between us. And for the first time in 14 years, she had no room left to perform. Her eyes moved from my face to the laptop on the island, then to the wedding ring I had placed beside it hours earlier. The screen was open to the folder she had never known existed. Week was still there in capital letters, neat and cold, surrounded by dates, videos, receipts, mileage logs, calendar records, legal notes, and the quiet architecture of everything she thought I would never find. She stared at the word like it had reached out and touched her. "Why would you call it that?" she whispered. I looked at her for a long moment, remembering the restaurant in Stamford, the polished laughter, Evan leaning back in his chair, the way she had smiled when she said I would forgive anything. "Because you named it first," I said. Her mouth trembled, but no defense came. Not right away. That was how I knew the truth had finally done what arguments never could. It had taken away her script. She stepped closer to the island, saw the rear porch clip paused at 1:12 in the morning, saw the Greenwich Hotel receipt, saw the photograph of the divorce strategy page with those 3 highlighted words. Establish emotional instability. Her face changed then, not with sadness, not with shame exactly, but with the stunned recognition of someone watching her own plan turn around and face her. "Daniel," she said. I was confused. I was angry. I did not know what I wanted. Maybe that was true in some small corner of the mess. Maybe people do not become cruel all at once. Maybe they make little agreements with themselves until the person they betray starts looking less human and more convenient. But I had spent too many nights trying to understand her pain while she was busy designing mine. I closed the laptop. The clicks sounded small, final, almost gentle. "Martha says we should communicate through counsel now," I said. Rachel blinked as if the sentence was in another language. "Counsel. Not baby. Not please. Not can we talk. Just counsel." She looked toward the living room, toward the framed Cape Cod photo over the fireplace, toward the couch, where we had once eaten takeout during a snowstorm because the power was out and we were still happy enough to laugh about it. I could see her searching for the old version of me, the one who would soften when she looked frightened. I missed him too, in a way. But missing a man is not the same as bringing him back. I picked up my ring from the island and placed it in a small envelope beside the laptop. Then I took my overnight bag from the mudroom bench. Rachel's voice broke quietly behind me. "Why did you not say anything sooner?" I stopped at the door. Outside, the driveway shone under the porch light, black and silver with rain. "Because silence was the only thing you never thought to protect yourself from," I said. I walked out without slamming the door. The air smelled like wet pavement and early spring, cold enough to clear my head. I loaded my bag into the truck and sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, watching the house in the rearview mirror. It still looked beautiful from the outside. White trim, warm windows, perfect lawn beginning to green at the edges. But I no longer needed beautiful things to be true. 2 months later, Rachel left her company quietly after the investigation confirmed enough to end her role. Evan disappeared into another state and another title that sounded smaller than the one he had bragged about. The divorce moved forward with less drama than she expected because facts have a way of exhausting lies. I rented a townhouse near the Saugatuck River, 12 minutes from my office, with old hardwood floors and a porch that caught the afternoon sun. Some evenings, I sat outside with coffee and listened to the train pass in the distance. No shouting. No proving. No begging to be seen. Just quiet. People used to tell me quiet was weakness. They were wrong. Quiet was where I rebuilt my name. Quiet was where I learned that a man does not have to destroy anyone to survive betrayal. Sometimes he only has to step back, let the truth enter the room, and stop protecting the person who invited it in.